Okay, I believe we are good to go, Anna. Let me just looking at the live stream just to make sure. Okay, we're good.
Awesome. Do we want to start recording? Can I do that, Jonathan, or can you grab that on your end? All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for your patience. We just needed to work out a couple of technical components. My name's Anna Cole. I am superintendent at Roaring Fork Schools, and so delighted that you are joining us this evening or watching a recording later to learn more about the our 2026 mill levy override exploratory process and to learn about the proposal that we are bringing to our Board of Education. This is a presentation of the work that our Mill Levy Override Committee has worked on this year for almost over a year to pull together the pieces of this recommendation to our Board of Education. So happy to get folks up to speed on where we've landed. So first, let's do a little bit of history and how we got here. If you've lived in the Roaring Fork Valley for more than the last 5 years, you know that we've been here before. In 2021, the Roaring Fork Schools passed an MLO that we communicated would be our last because we had maxed out the cap of what we could actually bring forward to our local community. That was a successful mill levy initiative, and it really helped us move our salaries for all staff into more competitive placement and into the top third of our comparison districts. What's happened since then is we've faced a number of internal challenges that we've solved and external challenges that remain a challenge for us and have brought us to this place now in 2026 where we're exploring another mill levy override. We'll talk about that. Some of those challenges that we faced won't be foreign to folks who live in the valley. We're seeing skyrocketing health insurance costs, inflation, changes in our state funding formula, and then as we're seeing, just like the state of Colorado and the country, declining student enrollment. So lots to pull these pieces together. Importantly, how we are doing as a district since then is we just keep getting stronger. A couple of things I want to highlight about the Roaring Fork Schools lately. You know, we are heading into year 3 of a 5-year strategic plan. That's that flower logo you see. And if you want to learn more about it, there's a ton of information as well as a live data dashboard that tracks our data and it tracks the progress we're making towards our goals over the remaining 3 years of the strategic plan. We've really shifted towards a stronger data-focused culture, really focusing on academic excellence and rigor and instructional leadership. And we see those positive shifts reflected in the data from our teachers. You can see that just last year, we had some of the highest positive responses on the Teaching and Learning Conditions Colorado survey. All this data is available publicly on the Colorado Department of Education's website. But you can see that highest score the Roaring Forks has ever received and outperforming the state, that 92% of our teachers agree that leaders effectively use data to drive improvements. And 92% of our teachers agree that leaders demonstrate high expectations for all kids. This is critical work as we advance towards our mission, ensuring that all children will thrive. And we're starting to see that taking place over the last 2 years. We are increasingly outperforming the state in academic growth for our students. And last year, 88% of our schools earned the highest rating on the state's performance framework. We've also turned the corner on some pretty significant financial challenges. I would dare say that we have one of the strongest finance teams and finance systems in the state of Colorado now that we're really proud of. Our internal house is in order. The challenges we're facing now are external. And we continue to be strong stewards of public dollars. In the Roaring Fork School District, our annual budget is about $100 million. And about 85% of that is a little under 100 million, but about 85% of our budget is directly going to schools. The state average is about 71 to 77% of total budget going to schools. So we're really proud of this number because it shows that our dollars are going to where the most important work happens, which is in our classrooms and our schools. And that we're running a pretty tight ship when it comes to central office administration, central office support, business office, facilities and transportation as we push more dollars to schools. And that's really important because if we're going to deliver on our mission and make sure that all children are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations, we know that we have to have high quality staff who are stable and consistent in our schools. And in fact, when it comes to students' outcomes, the research consistently shows the number one factor impacting student success are high quality teachers. And if you know the teachers in the Roaring Fork schools and the staff in the Roaring Fork schools, we are privileged to have an incredible almost 1,000 staff members who support over 5,000 students in our community. We believe strongly that we are home to the best teachers and staff. And a critical component of our strategic plan is to ensure that those staff members are thriving. We have to make sure we can recruit and retain high quality teachers and staff. And the challenge right now is that the current school funding is falling short of supporting competitive salaries. This is a critical component of our strategic plan that our team needs to be thriving, and it's a tension point right now, and we'll explain a little bit why. If you live in the Roaring Fork Valley, you know these facts, or you're living them to some extent or another. We live in the highest healthcare cost region in the state of Colorado, and depending on the data you're looking at, perhaps the highest cost in the country. In the state of Colorado, the Roaring Fork Schools is the fourth highest cost of living school district. And right now, our average teacher salaries are coming in about 16th. There's a lot of reasons behind this. It has a lot to do with these external pressures of high cost of living and limited funding from the state. One of the things that we feel pretty strongly is that when there's high cost of living and salaries aren't keeping up competitively, what we have is turnover in our positions, unfilled positions. We lose experienced educators, and we lose high quality educators and staff due to competition from neighboring school districts. And folks, again, who live in the Roaring Fork Valley, this will sound familiar to you. One of the things we consistently see is that staff can't afford to own homes where they work. You can see kind of the average mortgage here, a teacher, either one working teacher or two working teachers can afford in terms of mortgage. And the closest average home teachers can afford is in Parachute, which is 2 districts away from the Roaring Fork schools. Additionally, most staff can't even afford to rent in the Roaring Fork School District, another pressure point that is a result of the high cost of living that we have here in the Valley. And one of the questions that comes up a lot as we've been talking to the community over this last year, exploring this work, is this question that says, you know, if you're a renter in the Roaring Fork School District, if you own property, if you own a business, what you've seen in the last couple of years is that property taxes have increased or rent has increased as a result of this. And taxpayers can see that their contributions to the Roaring Fork School District have increased over time. And so it begs the question, wait a minute, I'm paying more to the Roaring Fork schools. Why do you need more funding? And this is a really important piece of the puzzle that we're grateful that you're taking the time to understand. So stay with us. There's a couple of contexts that are really important to answer this question. First is understanding how Colorado fits in the national landscape of school funding. Despite being the 8th wealthiest state, Colorado is in the bottom half of states when it comes to per pupil funding or funding for public education. We rank lowest in the country in terms of competitive teacher wages. And despite rising property values, school funding has actually not increased. So even though folks are paying more in taxes, what we're receiving as the Roaring Fork schools hasn't shifted. So let me explain a little bit about how that works. So bear with me. I think this is really fascinating work and very important for understanding the context of why this mill levy is important. So the way school funding works in the state of Colorado is that our state legislature sets every year what's the base called the statewide base of per pupil funding. It's usually around $8,000 or $9,000 per student. And then they take that number and they run it through an algorithm, kind of an algebraic equation that results in a different funding level for every district because every school district is a little different in terms of who they serve. So the state legislature takes that base funding, multiplies it by the total of number of students we serve, and then adjusts that number for the number of at-risk pupils, which would be the number of students we serve whose family income is beneath the federal poverty level. Then they take into account the number of English language learners that we serve. They take into account the number of students with disabilities or special education pupils that we serve. There's an adjustment then made to that number for cost of living. And there's a size adjustment. We don't benefit a ton from that. Really tiny districts do. That results in this number that's your total district funding, or what we would call our per pupil funding. But what's really important about this is that doesn't convert into a check from the state. What the state then says is, okay, this is your total district funding. How much of those dollars can you raise locally from property taxes or taxes on small businesses and businesses? And then what happens is the state determines, okay, that's how much you can raise locally, and the state pays the rest. The problem and the challenge for anybody who's been living in the valley that is as our property values have increased, so have our taxes, and your contribution to the Roaring Fork schools has increased because property values have increased. But that hasn't changed the total district funding number. And instead, when the state comes and says, well, how much money can you raise locally? That amount is actually higher than it used to be, and the state pays less. Another way to look at that, if you think about it, those dollars, that total district funding remains the same. It's really a matter of the proportionality. How much does the local community pay of that, and how much does the state? And you can see that in just simply the last 2 to 3 years, we have really significantly increased the local share of our total district funding, while the state has has reduced its contributions to the Roaring Fork School District. And it gets a little more complicated. So the other thing that has happened was that recently, in order to save dollars, the state actually went in and reduced the cost of living factor. So it capped the cost of living factor, meaning for school districts that had very high cost of living, they actually reduced the total number of dollars that you could receive in order to save money at the state level. And what they did is a bit of kind of a consolation, or I don't know, I think of it as a consolation prize. What the state said was, well, if you're a school district that has maxed out your mill levies, like the Roaring Fork Schools has, and we cut your cost of living factor, reducing the amount of dollars you can get, for a short window of time, you can go back to your local community, because we're going to temporarily increase the mill levy capacity. And so what the state has done is it's continued to kind of shift the burden of funding to local communities, and created this window of opportunity for us to try to make up what was lost by the cost of living factor if we can raise additional funding locally. So that's really the opportunity that we have right now. It's a state funding issue, but there is a local solution. And I want to name that this is not something that we take lightly. The majority of our staff live in this community. We all work in our community, and the reality of this potential ask and what we're recommending to the board and potentially asking our voters comes with a bit of a heavy heart. And there's some tension in the fact that we know our local taxpayers are seeing an increased burden. And we know that this is a big ask. And at the same time, we recognize that in order to deliver on our mission for kids and to drive strong academic outcomes for all students, we need a thriving staff, and we need to be able to provide competitive wages. And so our committee really, in doing this research, determined that this is the right time to come back to our community and share this challenge and work towards a local solution. So a mill levy override is a voter approved local funding. You can kind of pitch it in a way that makes sense for the district and make that suggestion and offer that question to your voters. It can support ongoing operations. It can fill gaps left by state funding, and the local dollars work completely separate to the state funding, that kind of green dollar number. So a mill levy override exists independently, with local dollars staying with the local district. What we are proposing and bringing to the board as our proposed recommendation with these potential dollars, if the board approves this recommendation, if our voters approve, is that we would use additional dollars raised locally to strengthen staff salaries, recruitment and retention efforts for staff, all in our efforts to strengthen academic outcomes and student achievement for all kids. It's important to recognize the cost of this for our community. These are all estimates because this number can be pretty dynamic. It does move a little bit depending on our student enrollment. But our best estimate is that this proposed MLO could raise about $5 million annually. Our 2021 mill levy raised about $7 to $8 million annually, so it's less than that. The estimated taxpayer annual impact, again, this is an estimate, is that if a home value is $500,000, the additional cost would be $85, we guess, $88 dollars per year. So it's an increase, we think, per $500,000 worth of home value of about $85, $86. All of these dollars would stay in our local community. And the way we're proposing to the Board of Education to allocate these funds, if the board puts this on the ballot, if our voters approve this, is that in the 26-27 school year, what we would do with those dollars, and I know this math doesn't quite add up, but let me explain it. We would take that 5 million and break it up this way. From the 5 million, we take 10% off for our district charter schools, Two Rivers Community School and Carbondale Community School. They have a lot of autonomy in the way that this would be allocated to them. So 10% would go to the charter schools. That leaves about 4.5 million. What we're proposing to the board is that about 10% of that, about 400,000 to 500,000, goes to recruitment retention efforts for staff. So things like we have an employee opportunity fund to help our employees advance, take additional coursework, advance their careers, to get credentials and education to be able to get in the classroom, and frankly, to get stronger skills to serve our students. Recruitment and retention efforts include our efforts around staff housing, include efforts around outreach and recruitment for new staff. And then with the remaining 4 to 4.1 million, the way we would break it up is certified teachers. We would allocate about 67% of that to increasing certified teacher salaries to get them more competitive with our comparable districts, and classified staff, our support staff, 33%. What we know, and with this proposal that we feel like is really important to this story, is that we know that strong schools benefit our entire community. When kids are thriving, when every child is meeting or exceeding grade level standards, we know that has such a positive impact on our community. That's what we really see this work and this potential investment about. Strong schools really attract families, attract employers, they support the local workforce, they strengthen our long-term economy, and really are a boon to the entire community. Where we're going with this exploration in terms of what happens next, our exploratory committee really has put together this proposal for the Board of Education. They will really consider the proposal at their public meeting on August 26th, where they will either accept and approve the proposal or say no, this isn't the right time. If they say yes, then what'll happen is this initiative, this MLO, this question will come before our voters in November. If you're interested and would like to be involved, we certainly would welcome your feedback, your questions. We have a survey that is available on our district website where you can also learn more, tons of information on the mill levy override proposal. And then if it becomes a formal ballot initiative. There'll be additional information, as at that point we can really we have to really make sure that we are educating the public both on pros and cons of an initiative that would impact us. So those are the big ideas around this proposal. We're really grateful for you, the community, for being part of this work, for sharing feedback all through this past year to help us refine this proposal and really align it with our strategic goals and mission. We'd love to welcome, if you have questions, pop them in the chat if that is accessible to you right now. And I'm going to pause a little bit and I'll stop sharing so that if you do have questions, we can have a minute to answer them.
And Anna, I've also put a note on the YouTube live stream. If there are some people there, if they've got a question, there's a chat over there. So I'll relay that if anything comes through. And
Perfect.
if anybody on the Zoom has a question and you're not able to type in the chat, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll allow you to come in and ask your question to the meeting because the speaking has been disabled.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. We'll give it another minute or so. Well, thank you for your engagement with this topic, for your support of the Roaring Fork Schools. Lots more information on our website. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much. Have a good night.